The vast emptiness of space suddenly lit up with urgent flashes of light across the Galactic Council's monitoring stations. Something unknown had entered their territory, moving at speeds that defied their understanding of physics. The central command room of the Council's defense platform buzzed with nervous energy as officers from a dozen different species tried to make sense of the readings. "Unknown vessel detected in Sector 7, announced the blue-skinned monitoring officer. "Power signature exceeds anything in our database." High Commander Trell, a tall, four-armed being with eyes that glowed like embers, leaned forward in his command chair. "Send identification request and prepare defense grid." This could be a first contact situation. Across the void, Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of the HSS Thunderchild, Earth's most advanced warship on its maiden voyage beyond known space. The ship's sleek design and powerful engines had carried them farther than any human vessel had traveled before. Walker was a calm man with steady hands and a firm voice that inspired confidence in his small but elite crew. "Captain, we're picking up signals from multiple vessels ahead," reported Lisa from the tactical station. Her fingers moved quickly across the glowing control panel. "They appear to be forming a blockade pattern." Walker nodded. "Atlas. Analysis." The ship's A responded in a smooth, gender-neutral voice that filled the bridge. "Unknown vessels have established a defensive formation. Their technology signatures suggest multiple species of origin. They appear to be the enforcement arm of a cooperative government." "First contact scenario," Walker said. "Let's do this by the book. Open channels and transmit our greeting package." The Council vessels received the human transmission, but misinterpreted the Thunderchild's power core signature as a weapons system powering up. The alien ships moved into attack positions. "The human vessel's energy core is cycling up," shouted an alarmed Council officer. "Those readings match known weapon systems." High Commander Trell raised his hand. "Fire warning shots. Wide pattern, low yield. Show them we're serious." Bright energy beams lanced through space, deliberately missing the Thunderchild, but close enough to register as hostile intent. On the human ship, alarms blared. "Captain, we're being fired upon." Lisa's voice remained professional despite the tension. "Defensive measures only," Walker ordered firmly. "Shields up, but hold your fire." The Thunderchild's advanced shield system activated, surrounding the ship with a shimmering blue field just as a second volley of alien weapons fire came closer, grazing the shield's outer edge. "They're testing our defenses," Walker observed. "Atlas, tactical options that minimize harm." Recommended course: demonstration of superior maneuverability while maintaining defensive posture, the AI suggested. Walker nodded and turned to his pilot. "Marcus, show them what this ship can do." Evasive pattern delta. Marcus grinned. "With pleasure, Captain." The Thunderchild suddenly moved with impossible grace for a vessel of its size. It spun, rolled, and accelerated in patterns that broke every rule of conventional space combat. The Council ships tried to track it, but found themselves firing at empty space as the human vessel danced between their shots. On the Council command ship, officers watched in stunned silence as their targeting systems failed to lock onto the human vessel. "Impossible," whispered High Commander Trell. "No ship that size should move like that." The Thunderchild came to a sudden stop directly in front of the Council flagship, perfectly positioned so that any attack would require firing through their own vessels. Walker stood tall on his bridge. "Send another transmission. Tell them we come in peace, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." He looked out at the alien ships through the view screen. "Let's hope they understand that humans prefer talking to fighting. But we're very good at both." The grand meeting chamber of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations shouted over each other as holographic displays showed the human warship that had so easily evaded their defense fleet. "This vessel represents an immediate threat to our security." Admiral Krell's deep voice cut through the noise. The Admiral stood tall, his scaled skin gleaming under the chamber lights. As the military leader of the Vexaran Empire, His opinion carried significant weight. Its weapons systems alone could devastate an entire planet. Intelligence Officer Lyra stepped forward. Unlike Krell's imposing presence, Lyra's slender blue form seemed almost fragile, but her voice was firm. We have no proof they intend harm. Their actions were defensive, not aggressive. They could have destroyed our patrol ships, but chose not to. A tactical decision, Krell growled. They're assessing our strength before striking. High Commander Trell silenced the room with a gesture of his 4 arms. We will observe this human vessel while preparing our response. Admiral Krell, ready your fleet. Officer Lyra, attempt further communication. Meanwhile, aboard the Thunderchild, Captain Walker stared at the stars through the viewport in his private quarters. Earth was now so distant it wasn't even visible as a speck of light. Captain, your heart rate indicates concern. Atlas spoke through the room's communication system. Would you like me to prepare a sleep aid? Walker smiled slightly. No need, Atlas. Just contemplating how alone we are out here. The crew's performance remains exemplary despite our situation. The AI replied. Walker nodded. They're the best Earth has to offer. A soft chime interrupted them. Captain to the bridge. Lisa's voice announced. When Walker arrived, his 3 crew members were already at their stations. Marcus at the helm controls, Lisa monitoring tactical systems, and Alan hunched over the science station. Report, Walker said. Alan looked up from his console. We've detected a distress signal from a small vessel approximately 3 light minutes from our position. It appears to be a mining ship with severe system failures. Any sign this is a trap? Walker asked. Lisa shook her head. Negative, Captain. The power readings are consistent with a genuine emergency. Their life support is failing. Walker didn't hesitate. Set a course, Marcus. Let's show our new neighbors what humans do when we find someone in trouble. The Thunderchild moved with purpose toward the disabled mining vessel. 3 larger alien ships were already nearby, but kept their distance. Why aren't they helping? Marcus wondered aloud. Ellen studied his readings. The mining vessel belongs to a species called the Trell. According to the communications we intercepted, they're considered a lower-tier civilization by the Council races, apparently not worth the risk of rescue. Walker's expression hardened. Well, that's not how we do things. Atlas, prepare the emergency transport systems. Lisa, maintain defensive readiness. The Thunderchild positioned itself alongside the crippled mining vessel. The advanced human ship extended stabilizing energy fields to the smaller craft. Survivors detected, Alan reported. 12 life signs, all weakening. Bring them aboard, Walker ordered. As this unfolded, Admiral Krell's personal vessel observed from a distance. Inside, the Admiral watched with calculating eyes. The humans are rescuing Trell miners. His second-in-command asked in confusion. An interesting strategy, Krell mused. Perhaps they seek allies among the lower races. On another council vessel, Intelligence Officer Lyra watched the same scene with different thoughts. Look how they risked their warship to save beings they've never met, she said to her assistant. Perhaps humans define strength differently than we do. Back on the Thunderchild, the 12 rescued miners huddled in the medical bay, their large eyes wide with fear and wonder. They had never been aboard such an advanced vessel. Walker entered and bowed slightly in a universal gesture of respect. You're safe now, he said, though he knew they couldn't understand his words. But the tone of his voice and the medical attention his crew provided spoke a language that needed no translation. Unknown to the humans, Admiral Krell was already gathering his battle fleet. This human vessel has made its first move, he told his commanders. We shall make the next one. Captain Walker stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild as the view screen filled with alien warships. Admiral Krell had arrived with a fleet of 30 vessels, each bristling with weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. They've surrounded us in a sphere formation, Lisa reported from the tactical station. No blind spots or escape vectors. Walker kept his face calm, though his mind raced through options. 8. Analysis of enemy capabilities. Their combined firepower exceeds our defensive capacity by approximately 300%. The AI responded evenly. However, their targeting systems are considerably less advanced than ours. A communication request flashed on the main screen. Walker nodded to Alan, who accepted the transmission. Admiral Krell's scaled face appeared, his yellow eyes narrowed with predatory focus. Human vessel, you have entered Galactic Council space unauthorized. You will power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction. Walker stepped forward. This is Captain James Walker of the Earth ship Thunderchild. We have no hostile intentions. The show of force is unnecessary. Your actions will determine that, Krell replied coldly. You have 10 minutes to comply. As the transmission ended, Marcus turned in his chair. Captain, they're not leaving us many options. Walker tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the command chair. Maybe we need to create a new option. He looked up with sudden inspiration. Open a channel to Admiral Krell. When Krell's face appeared again, his expression showed annoyance at the human's persistence. Admiral, Walker began, instead of risking lives on both sides, I propose a demonstration. A series of war games, if you will. Your best ships against the Thunderchild in non-lethal combat scenarios. Krell's face registered surprise, then interest. You propose to challenge my fleet to games. Controlled exercises, Walker clarified. We prove our capabilities without bloodshed. If we perform well, we earn the right to diplomatic talks instead of surrender. After a brief consultation with his commanders, Krell agreed. 3 challenges. Should you fail any of them, you surrender immediately. The first challenge was simple, a pursuit exercise. 5 of Krell's fastest ships against the Thunderchild in an asteroid field. They think their numbers will overwhelm us, Marcus said as he took his position at the helm. Walker nodded. Let's show them how humans handle odds. What followed astonished the watching Council fleet. The Thunderchild didn't just evade the 5 pursuers. It led them on a complex dance through the asteroid field. The human ship used the large rocks as cover, accelerating and stopping with precision that made the alien vessels seem clumsy by comparison. Impossible, muttered a Vexaren commander as the Thunderchild executed a tight turn around an asteroid that should have torn apart a ship of its size. For the second challenge, Krell demanded a targeting competition. Both sides would fire non-lethal energy pulses at moving drone targets. Lisa took control of the Thunderchild's weapon systems. Her hands moved across the tactical console with practiced precision. While the alien gunners hit their targets with brute force and multiple shots, Lisa demonstrated economy of movement. Each drone received exactly 1 precisely calculated shot. The human female doesn't waste energy, noted one of Krell's officers with reluctant admiration. The final challenge was Krell's specialty, tactical fleet engagement. 10 of his ships formed an attack pattern against the Thunderchild. They're confident in their numerical advantage, Walker observed. 8. Activate adaptive combat systems. Adaptive systems online. The AI confirmed. Learning algorithms engage. What the Council fleet witnessed next changed their understanding of warfare forever. Instead of attempting to outgun the superior force, the Thunderchild predicted their movements and used their own tactics against them. When the alien ships formed a pincer movement, the human vessels slipped between them, causing confusion in their ranks. When they attempted to herd the Thunderchild toward a trap, the human ship instead led 2 pursuers into colliding with each other. With each passing minute, the Thunderchild's responses became more effective, as if it were learning from its opponents in real time. On his command ship, Admiral Krell watched with growing frustration as his carefully planned maneuvers failed one after another. How are they anticipating every move? He demanded. Intelligence Officer Lara, who had been observing from a diplomatic vessel, smiled slightly. It seems, Admiral, that humans don't just build warships. They build warships that learn. As the exercise ended, Walker received a private message on his personal screen. It contained a warning from an unknown source. Beware of sabotage. Not everyone wants these games to end peacefully. Alarms blared throughout the Thunderchild as the ship's lights flickered ominously. Marcus fought with the control systems while Alan frantically analyzed the damage reports flooding his screen. "Captain, we've lost propulsion and weapons systems," Lisa reported, her voice tense but controlled. "Something has corrupted the primary command protocols." Walker turned to the view screen where Admiral Krell's face appeared, showing poorly concealed satisfaction. "It seems your impressive vessel has suffered an unfortunate malfunction, Captain. A malfunction that coincidentally happened right after we demonstrated our capabilities," Walker replied evenly. "We'll need time for repairs." "Of course," Krell agreed with false sympathy. "The Council extends an invitation to discuss your situation while your crew makes repairs. A diplomatic shuttle will arrive shortly." After the transmission ended, Walker turned to Atlas. Analysis. "The damage pattern suggests targeted sabotage," the AI reported. "I've isolated the affected systems, but repairs will take approximately 12 hours. Walker nodded grimly. "Keep working. I'll handle the diplomacy." The Council's diplomatic vessel docked with the Thunderchild, and Walker welcomed a small delegation led by Intelligence Officer Lyra and 3 other representatives. To his surprise, they requested a tour of the ship. "We are curious about human technology," Lyra explained. Her large eyes studied Walker with undisguised interest, "particularly your approach to warfare." Walker decided to use this opportunity. "I'd be happy to show you around." As they walked through the ship, the alien representatives marveled at the Thunderchild's design. In the weapons control room, Walker paused to explain a fundamental concept. "Our weapons are designed with precision rather than raw power," he told them, pointing to the targeting systems. "Humans learned long ago that destroying your enemy completely isn't always the wisest approach. But surely maximum destruction ensures victory," one of the representatives argued. Walker shook his head. "In human history, we discovered that leaving your enemy no option but death means they have no reason not to fight to the last breath. Our weapons are designed to disable, not obliterate." In the engine room, Marcus was supervising repairs while explaining human propulsion concepts to the fascinated aliens. "Your approach seems inefficient," noted a tall, insect-like representative. "You could generate more power with a simpler design." Marcus grinned. "Simple isn't always better. Our engines are designed to be redundant and adaptable. We'd rather have a system that works at 70% in 10 different ways than one that works at 100% in just one way." As the tour continued to the medical bay, where the rescued trail miners were recovering, Lyra observed the care being provided to these aliens. "You treat them as equals," she noted with surprise. "Yet their technology is centuries behind yours." Walker looked at her steadily. "A society is judged not by how it treats its equals, but by how it treats those with less power." This concept clearly unsettled the Council representatives, who exchanged glances of confusion. Later, in Walker's ready room, Lyra leaned forward with sudden urgency. "Captain, I must share something with you. The sabotage of your ship was ordered by Admiral Krell. He fears what your presence means for the power balance in our region." "Why tell me this?" Walker asked. "Because I've reviewed your transmissions and observed your actions. Humans approach conflict differently than any species we've encountered. You possess tremendous power, but exercise remarkable restraint." Their conversation was interrupted by Alan's urgent voice over the communication system. "Captain, to the bridge immediately." When Walker arrived with Lyra following, the view screen showed a swarm of strange, crystalline ships approaching from the edge of the system. "They're not responding to hails," Lisa reported. Lyra's face paled. "The swarm. They consume everything in their path. No negotiation, no mercy." One of the swarm vessels fired on a Council observation post, obliterating it instantly. "They'd never come this far into Council space before," Lyra whispered. "Why now?" Walker watched as both Council ships and Krell's fleet began to scatter in panic. His expression hardened with resolve. "Atlas, what's our repair status?" "Main systems at 42% functionality, Captain. Enough to move and fight." "Barely, but yes." Walker turned to Lyra. "It seems we have a common enemy. Perhaps it's time to show the Council how humans really fight when necessary." The Thunderchild moved into position as the Council ships scattered before the advancing swarm. Only Admiral Krell's command vessel remained somewhat steady, though it kept a safe distance from the fight. "Open a channel to all Council vessels," Walker ordered. When the communication system indicated a successful connection, he spoke clearly and with authority. "This is Captain Walker of the Earth ship Thunderchild. The swarm is targeting your civilian outposts first. We propose a coordinated defense." Admiral Krell's face appeared on the screen, his scaled features tight with tension. "You expect us to follow a human's battle plan. Your ship is damaged and outnumbered 50-1. And yet we're not running," Walker replied calmly. "At last, share our tactical assessment with the Council fleet." The AI transmitted data packets showing predicted swarm movements and suggested defensive positions. Most Council ships ignored the information, but 3 vessels, including Lyra's diplomatic ship, moved to the positions Walker suggested. "Captain, the swarm has noticed us," Lisa reported from Tactical. 5 ships breaking off to intercept." Walker nodded. "Marcus, evasive pattern echo. Lisa, target their propulsion systems only." The Thunderchild moved with surprising agility despite its damaged state. When the swarm vessels fired their energy weapons, the human ship twisted aside, letting the beams pass harmlessly by. Lysa's return fire was surgical, disabling 2 enemy ships with precise shots to their engine sections. On the bridge of his command vessel, Admiral Krell watched with growing disbelief. How are they fighting so effectively with a damaged ship? Lyra's voice came through on a secure channel. "They understand something we don't, Admiral. Look at their tactics. They're not trying to destroy the swarm, just disrupt their formation." Indeed, the Thunderchild was dancing between swarm vessels, causing them to fire at each other in their attempt to hit the nimble human ship. When 3 more Council vessels joined the fight using Walker's suggested tactics, the swarm's advance began to slow. Inside the Thunderchild, Walker stood steady despite the ship shuddering under enemy fire. "Atlas, what have you learned about swarm communication patterns?" "Analysis complete, Captain," the AI responded. "They appear to use quantum-entangled signals. Their ships function as a collective mind rather than individual units." Walker's eyes lit up with understanding. "So disrupting their communication would be like severing a neural connection." "Precisely, Captain. But our conventional jamming systems are inadequate." Walker turned to Alan at the science station. "Could we modify our communication array to generate interference on their frequency?" Alan's fingers flew across his console. "It's possible, but we'd need to get dangerously close to their command ship." "Plot a course," Walker ordered. Then he opened a channel to the Council ships fighting alongside them. "We're going to attempt to disrupt the swarm's communication network. We need covering fire." To everyone's surprise, Admiral Krell's voice responded. "The Vexaran fleet will provide that cover, human." After a short pause, he added, "Your tactics have merit." The Thunderchild plunged toward the heart of the swarm formation, with Krell's ships forming a protective wedge. Enemy fire rocked the human vessel, but Marcus's piloting kept them moving forward. "Shields at 28%, Lisa reported. "One more direct hit and we're exposed." "Communication array reconfigured," Alan announced. "Ready on your command." They had reached the center of the swarm fleet. The massive command ship loomed ahead, its crystalline surface reflecting the light of nearby weapons fire. "Now," Walker ordered. The Thunderchild released a pulse of energy unlike anything the Council races had seen before. Rather than damaging the swarm ships physically, it created a cascade of disruption through their communication network. The enemy vessels suddenly moved erratically, like creatures suffering seizures. "It's working." Lyra's excited voice came over the communication channel. "Their coordination is breaking down." For several tense minutes, the Thunderchild maintained its position, continuing to broadcast the disruption signal despite taking heavy damage. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the swarm vessels began to retreat. On the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Krell stood in silent amazement. "They didn't destroy the enemy," he said quietly. "They simply confused them." As the Thunderchild limped back from the front line, its hull scared and systems failing, the Council ships formed an honor guard around it. Walker slumped slightly in his command chair, exhausted but satisfied. "Captain," Atlas reported, "I'm receiving requests from 17 different Council species. They want to know about human military philosophy." Walker smiled tiredly. "Tell them it's simple. The best victory is the one where you don't destroy your enemy. You just convince them that fighting you isn't worth the cost." 3 days after the battle, the Thunderchild floated in a massive repair dock at the Galactic Council's central station. Council engineers worked alongside the human crew, marveling at the ship's design as they helped with repairs. In the Grand Council chamber, Captain Walker stood before representatives of 32 species. His uniform was freshly pressed, but his face showed lingering fatigue from the battle. "The swarm has retreated beyond our sensor range," High Commander Trell announced to the assembly, "thanks in large part to the human tactics." Admiral Krell sat stiffly in his ceremonial armor. "We must prepare for their return. They will adapt to the disruption technique." Walker nodded in agreement. "The swarm is intelligent. They learn from each encounter, just as we do. Then we must destroy them completely when they return," one representative called out. Many others voiced their agreement. Walker stepped forward. "With respect, total destruction may not be the answer." A murmur of confusion spread through the chamber. Admiral Krell's eyes narrowed. What alternative could there possibly be for such an enemy? "Communication," Walker said simply. The chamber fell silent. "We disrupted their network, but never tried to understand it. What if we could establish contact with the swarm consciousness?" "Madness," Krell spat. "They are destroyers, not diplomats." Walker turned to face the Admiral directly. "Have you ever tried to communicate with them?" "Of course not. They attack without warning or provocation." "So did you, when we first arrived," Walker pointed out quietly. The chamber fell silent as the implication sank in. Lyra stepped forward from her position among the diplomatic corps. "Captain Walker's suggestion has merit. If the swarm is a collective intelligence, perhaps it acts on instinct rather than malice." The debate raged for hours. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The Council would prepare for war while the Thunderchild attempted communication. Walker returned to his ship with a mixture of hope and concern. "Atlas, can we modify the disruption signal to carry information instead?" he asked once back on the bridge. "Theoretically, yes," the AI responded. "But we would need to understand their language, their very concept of communication." Aelen looked up from the science station. "I've been studying the patterns in their quantum signals. There's a mathematical structure to it. If we approach it as a problem of advanced mathematics rather than language." For the next 2 days, the Thunderchild's crew worked tirelessly to develop a communication protocol. Marcus modified the ship's engines for quick escape if needed, while Lisa refined the targeting systems to protect the communication array. Finally, they were ready. The Thunderchild departed the Council station alone, despite Admiral Krell's insistence on providing an armed escort. "We can't approach them as a threat if we want to communicate," Walker had argued. At the edge of the system, the sensors detected what they were waiting for: a single swarm scout ship. "They're scanning us," Lisa reported. "Weapons charging." Walker took a deep breath. "Alan, initiate the communication sequence." The science officer activated the modified array. Instead of disrupting the swarm's network, they sent a series of mathematical proofs and simple geometric patterns, universal concepts that any advanced intelligence should recognize. Tense minutes passed. The swarm ship maintained its position, weapons still charged but not firing. "They're responding," Alan said suddenly, excitement in his voice. "Mathematical equations, modifications to our proofs. They're communicating." For hours, the exchange continued, growing more complex. The Thunderchild sent images of different species living in cooperation. The swarm replied with indecipherable symbols until Aglas made a breakthrough. "Captain, I believe they're confused by the concept of distinct species cooperating. Their consciousness is unified. They don't understand separate identities working together." Walker thought for a moment. Send them images of the human brain, individual cells working as one consciousness. When they did, the response was immediate. A flood of information poured in, overwhelming their systems temporarily. "They think we're like them," Alan said in wonder. "A collective of smaller beings forming one intelligence. They've been consuming resources because they didn't recognize other life forms as sentient, just as resources." On the bridge of his battleship, Admiral Krell watched the exchange from a distance, his weapons locked on the swarm vessel. His finger hovered over the firing control. "This is foolishness," he muttered. "They'll learn our weaknesses and destroy us all." His second-in-command looked troubled. "Sir, if you fire, you'll destroy the human ship too." Krell's expression hardened, a necessary sacrifice to protect the Council. As his finger moved to press the button, Lyra's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral Krell, stand down immediately by order of High Commander Trell. We are witnessing something unprecedented, the beginning of understanding with an enemy we've fought for centuries." 3 months later, the Thunderchild hovered in space alongside vessels from both the Council and the Swarm. The scene would have been unimaginable before. Enemies of countless battles now positioned in peaceful formation. Captain Walker stood in the newly constructed meeting chamber aboard the massive Council diplomatic station. Representatives from all Council species filled the room, their attention fixed on the strange crystalline structure in the center. Inside it floated a shimmering, translucent being, the first Swarm ambassador. High Commander Trell addressed the historic gathering. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. For the first time, the Swarm joins us in dialogue rather than combat." The Swarm ambassador's thoughts translated through a communication system designed by Alan and the Council's best scientists. "We have existed for millennia, believing ourselves alone in conscious thought. We consumed resources, not recognizing that what we took were homes and lives of other thinking beings." Walker stepped forward when invited to speak. The past months had been exhausting but rewarding. The Thunderchild had served as the bridge between civilizations, its crew working tirelessly to build understanding where only hatred had existed before. "Humans have a saying," Walker began. "The greatest victory is the battle never fought." For centuries, our own species waged war against itself until we realized that understanding our enemies often removed the need to fight them. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes and sensory organs of dozens of different species. "The Thunderchild came to your space prepared for war because humanity learned through bitter experience that strength is sometimes necessary. But we also learned that strength without wisdom leads only to destruction." Admiral Krell sat stiffly in his ceremonial place. The past months had not been kind to him. His attempt to destroy the Swarm ship during first contact had cost him his primary command, though he retained his position as military advisor. He still viewed the Swarm with suspicion, but even he could not deny the benefits of peace. After the formal ceremony, Walker found himself surrounded by Council representatives eager to establish relations with Earth. The Thunderchild was no longer alone. Communication relays now connected it to human space, and plans were underway for regular diplomatic missions. Lyra approached Walker with a smile. "Your ship came to redefine war, Captain. Instead, you redefined peace." Walker nodded thoughtfully. Not me. Humanity. We brought our history with us. Every mistake, every triumph. On the observation deck later that evening, Walker stood with his small crew, looking out at the stars. The Thunderchild was scheduled to begin its journey home the next day, carrying council ambassadors eager to establish formal relations with Earth. Hard to believe it's been only a few months, Marcus said, sipping a drink from his homeworld that the council engineers had managed to synthesize. Lisa nodded. From enemies to allies in the blink of an eye, cosmically speaking. What happens when we get home? Aelin asked. Everything will be different now. Walker smiled. That's what exploration is all about. Finding new things that change your perspective. Atlas spoke through the room's communication system. Captain, I've completed the final analysis of swarm communication patterns. They have a concept similar to human music, mathematical patterns that evoke emotional responses. I believe this shared trait helped facilitate our understanding. Another bridge between different minds, Walker mused. The door slid open, and Admiral Krell entered stiffly. The humans fell silent, watching him cautiously. Captain Walker, Krell began formally. The Council has decided that as part of our new treaty with Earth, a permanent exchange of military philosophy and technology will be established. He paused, visibly struggling with his next words. I have been assigned as the first exchange officer to Earth. Walker hid his surprise and extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Krell took it. Your vessel and crew have changed everything, Captain, the Admiral admitted quietly. I still don't fully understand your approach to warfare, how restraint can be stronger than overwhelming force. But I wish to learn. As the Thunderchild prepared for its journey home the next day, Council ships and swarm vessels formed an honor guard to mark its departure. On the bridge, Walker gave the command to engage the engines. Set course for Earth, Marcus. Let's bring home more than just tales of battle. Let's bring home a new understanding of what it means to be strong. The ship's powerful engines hummed to life. The vessel that had arrived ready for war was leaving as a symbol of a different kind of strength. The power to turn enemies into allies, to find common ground across the gulf of different minds. As the stars stretched into streaks of light around them, humanity's first mission to distant space ended not with the thunder of battle, but with the quiet promise of understanding.